Right, good morning, everybody. The 8 a.m. Las Vegas crew, you made it. You're here. Give yourself a round of applause so we can wake ourselves up just a little bit. Thanks so much for joining. This session is called How to Make the Most of Adobe Real-Time CDP. My name is Ryan Fleisch. I lead product marketing for this application. I'm honored to be joined by one of our amazing partners, Tim Hayden.
Good morning, everyone, and yes, congratulations. Well done for making it. I'm with Epsilon. I've been working with clients on their MarTech challenges for something in the region of 20 years now. The last 10, I've been focused on identity. But Epsilon's been doing identity and delivering identity solutions to clients for decades now. Obviously, that's become a lot more of a hot topic these last few years with things like regulation creeping in, the loss of third-party cookies. But we'll get into all of that during our session. Back to you, Ryan.
Thanks so much, Tim. So I recognize this is kind of a broad and nebulous title, How to Make the Most of Real-Time CDP. We could probably spend the entirety of our time in Vegas here together. So let me focus this a little bit on what we're going to talk about today. And maybe I'll start backwards here. The fourth box, I think, is what this industry, the CDP industry, is desperately needed, and that's a better understanding of what use cases should I actually be using a CDP for, and how do I attach value to those. So we'll go kind of Quentin Tarantino here and give you the ending there. But how we're going to get to that state is we're first going to talk about the reason CDPs came about as a category, why building a first-party data strategy is still paramount, but how that has rapidly evolved to also require for CDPs to be effective and give you that value, the need to accomplish full-funnel marketing use cases. And we're also going to have a dedicated session. Tim and I will talk through these first two as well, but a dedicated session to understand how partners like Epsilon can be an absolutely essential resource to fulfilling those first two boxes and actually opening up the top of your funnel and saying, how am I going to acquire new customers and do that without third-party cookies? So let's start with the first-party data strategy piece. I recognize some of you, maybe all of you, are sick of hearing about the so-called cookieless future, but I'd be remiss not to start there for just 2 seconds. We understand that there has been some very shifting timelines that everyone has had to grapple with. But I think the important thing that we all remember is that the cookie block has been chipped away at since 2013. I'll give you some numbers in just a minute about some research that we've done to really quantify how much of the cookieless future is actually the cookieless now. How many of your customers, how much of your media is likely going to environments where third-party cookies are already deprecated. That being said, we know that, hey, there's still this sort of Damocles hanging over our head of when Google decides to pull the plug on third-party cookies in Chrome, which represents about a 65% market share of the browser world. That's now expected in late 2024, but there's a lot more to this story than just a timeline. The third-party cookies going away from different environments is coupled with another and maybe even greater challenge, and that's the rising consumer expectations against their expectations of personalization. This obviously puts all of us in a somewhat difficult situation. If consumer expectations continue to be on the rise, the first stat here is 2 out of 3 consumers expect personalized experiences. I think that stat's kind of whatever, right? We all know this. But here's kind of the subtext to that I think is interesting. As part of the same research we did, we asked, okay, what do you feel is a fair shake for your data? If a brand is collecting your data, what would you want in return? Maybe not so surprisingly, the number one response was, give me something free. I think we can all relate to that. But what was only 3 percentage points below that, and the survey response, was give me personalized experiences. And I promise I didn't write the results to that survey, but that was music to my ears, right? That there is actually, consumers truly are valuing personalized experiences almost to the same level that they are some monetary direct benefit. However, only 25 to 50% of marketing content is currently being personalized. And you've heard a lot about the challenges of that, but also the solutions that are getting introduced, that if consumer expectations are higher, we're reaching them in more environments, that, of course, requires more content and the production of that content. So I hope everyone's energized from what you heard in yesterday's keynote around generative AI, around our content supply chain, and how that's going to help solve a critical piece of this puzzle. But the last stat in that first column is that, unfortunately, from the consumer perspective, this isn't really getting resolved. 68% said we feel experiences have actually stayed the same or even gotten worse over the past year. So this is creating a larger and larger disparity of that's the consumer angle. The angle that all of you are thinking about is, yeah, not only do I have to keep up with that, I have to do so with just really dynamic policies from government, from data, from technology providers on what I can and can't do and how I can actually build and respect build an understanding and respect my customers. We talked about the first number in that middle column, but I think the other two are really important to consider as well. That of the environments where third-party cookies still work, up to 68% of folks are already opting out of cookies. And for other environments, take Apple App Tracking, for instance, less than 25% have opted in. All of this means that, yeah, there's a lot of reimagine that's probably necessary around first-party data strategies. The study we did with Advantis looked at over 400 professionals across marketing, across IT, and what we saw is that of all of the use cases they were currently doing around personalization, from acquisition to loyalty and everything in between, 60% of those efforts were going to be compromised by the demise of third-party cookies. So, rightly so, brands are feeling an increased urgency to get prepared there, but what's interesting is the answers haven't fully been clear. We did this study year over year. The first year we ran it, 37% of brands said, yeah, I'm ready. Bring on the cookieless future now. We're good to go. Well, we ran it a year later, and only 33% said they were prepared. So I think it's telling, right, of how people are still searching for answers. What that's led us to as a CDP space is this. Some of you might be familiar with this report that Gartner does. They do it across technology categories. And I've just extracted one data point from it. The key thing to note about the Gartner hype cycle is that essentially every technology goes through this same cycle. The question is just how quickly does it move across the different sides of it. With the CDP market, which has been around since 2013, but really just been in the past few years that it's gotten a lot of steam, it rode this early adoption or this peak of innovation, peak of inflated expectations wave where people said, great, a CDP is going to solve all the world's problems. I just buy that, I flip a switch, and I'm good to go. Where we're at now is that kind of resetting of expectations. I think more so the resetting of expectations, it's the looking for answers of, okay, great, maybe I've built a good first-party data strategy. Maybe I've got a unified view of my customer if I've already adopted a CDP. But now what? What do I need to go do to actually get to that plateau of productivity and really attach value to a CDP I might have or might be considering? That's what we want to talk you through today. It's how do we help you move as a market out of this trough, and what is Adobe doing to really expedite that slope of enlightenment, that plateau of productivity, so everyone can make sure they're having value realization here. These are the three questions I think that have still been needing answers as a market to really get full value out of a CDP. Again, maybe you've already built a good view of your customer. Maybe you have your data sources and you know what you're going to assemble. But the question remains, how am I going to actually find and reach new audiences for acquisition and prospecting? How am I going to retarget prospects that have been to my site? And how am I going to do that if I don't have third-party cookies? Second is how do I create engaging and impactful personalized experiences across all touch points if I don't have the right data to understand who is on any property at any given time to be able, especially in unauthenticated states, to be able to personalize to them. And the third is that if you think of the role cookies played not just in personalization, but understanding the touch points in a customer journey, that also potentially leaves holes in your understanding of what that holistic journey looks like. So how am I going to understand that? So I want to maybe ask Tim, can you chime in on kind of what you see from the Epsilon side and some of your customers against these challenges? Yeah, indeed. So this is a pretty good representative example of the questions clients are coming to us with, right? We also see these issues manifesting themselves in areas like onboarding, media reach, attribution, and so forth. So these challenges typically, given what's happened recently, lie in the foundation of that client's data. So what we like to do when we start working with these clients is understand what that baseline looks like across all of those areas. Number one, what do your match rates look like?
What do your reach rates look like? How is your attribution? How are you able to measure the performance of your marketing efforts? So we'll start there and try and get a baseline and understand what those clients are doing. And then we'll really go back from there and start to look at things like, okay, now we know what that baseline is, what are the areas that we can start to improve? How will we then tie that back? And that's how we would start a project with a client.
Thanks, Tim. And by the way, I'm proposing the problems, the questions here. I hope everyone will leave with answers over the next 2 sections. If you don't, you can request your money back for Summit here. But this is the 3 things we're going to tackle for what we're going to solve and how to get value out of this session. So let's first keep going with the first-party data strategy for just a second. There's 4 flavors, as I see it, of how to build a proper first-party data strategy. First is all of the different sources you might have on the actual person attribute data, typically PII. Who this person is, age, name, gender, loyalty status with your program, phone number, email address. These are all those durable identifiers that would go into building a person profile. But that has to be coupled with what is their behavior and what is happening in real time with that. What have they last done? Have they clicked on an ad, visited a property, seen a message somewhere else? All of these things are really the real-time signals that inform how someone should be engaged with responsibly and intelligently. There's data that you are going to have on your customers, and part of the strategy is just how do I orchestrate and assemble this data into a unified view? But what we're going to spend time on is what about the data that maybe you don't have on a customer but is out there and we could learn about? As a quick example, Lori, I know you're back there somewhere. Hey, Lori. So Lori and I work together. There's things I know about Lori that she has told me directly. There's things I know about Lori that coworkers have told me. And I saw her session yesterday, webinars Lori's done. Those are things I observe, right, externally. So that is akin to first, second, and third-party data, right? What is exchanged directly with someone? What might you hear about someone through a mutual connection? And what might you see publicly out there? So Tim, maybe once again, can you tell us how Epsilon would complement someone's first-party data strategy with the person and behavioral side of things?
Well, I think, first of all, we would actually start with the first-party data, right? We want to make sure that you're getting the most out of all the data that exists within your 4 walls today. And that isn't only coming from your marketing systems, right? There's a ton of information in financial systems. Maybe a client is making a loan payment or a lease payment. They're coming into your physical locations. Maybe they're transacting in store. They're transacting at point of sale. Maybe they're engaging with kiosks. All of these individual touch points represent an opportunity for you to capture first-party data from that client, from that consumer. So the first thing we want to do is pull together all of that information. Now, there are challenges with this, because oftentimes people don't always use or identify themselves when they go to that touch point. I'm going to turn to you, Ryan, as an example. So Ryan is Ryan Thomas Fleisch. He grew up in Texas. He moved to New York. Let's just use a fictitious example where he's shopping at a clothing retailer. Maybe he started shopping at that clothing retailer down in Texas, and he actually used the name Thomas Fleisch as an example. That's what his family called him, Tom, growing up, and that's how he was known colloquially around town. So that's what he registered with that retailer. He moved up to New York. He felt, he started to use his second name as his first name. Now he's Ryan Fleisch. He's registered in New York. He's going into that same retailer, but now he's Ryan Fleisch in New York, not Thomas Fleisch from Texas. So now we have 2 separate records for that same individual, right? Now you, as a brand, as a retailer, are going to struggle to join those 2 records together and recognize that that's actually the same individual. And that's where Epsilon's identity solution comes in. And as I said at the beginning, we've been working with these clients around these solutions for the last number of decades. So we've seen these challenges evolve over time. So that's just a very simple example. Now, that's just the record. On top of that, and the second element here, we have behavioral data. So all that behavioral data associated with Thomas Fleisch and all that behavioral data associated with Ryan Fleisch, when you resolve that identity, you bring not only the individual record and identifiers together, but you bring that behavioral data together as well. So now you're developing a far enhanced, higher resolution of that individual just with your first-party data. We haven't even started to add on the third-party data yet. Right? So it's important that you actually, as we said before, as we baseline that first-party data, so you have and are able to capitalize on the true value of it in the first instance. Back to you, Ryan.
And beyond just understanding the person and the behavioral data, there's another really critical element to this, especially as we start talking about bringing in data from other sources, be it partner brands, be it data partners. And that's, how does this consumer want to be treated? Ensuring that you're actually respecting them, honoring their preferences, ensuring consent, and using that through every touch point is no longer just an option, right? I know with certain clients I talk to in highly regulated industries, that's clearly high stakes in getting this right. But another survey we just did asked, hey, what's the value of actually building trust? And on the consumer side, are you more likely to do business with a brand you trust? The results were overwhelming. You can find that study on adobe.com if you search for consumer trust. So honoring preferences there is so important when we consider how to handle those first two types of data. And finally, ensuring that you have the ability to build individual profiles, but how do you want to orchestrate those and group those into audiences with certain treatments against them? So are they eligible for a certain offer? And also, is there AI modeling that we can help you with to say this audience, right, has a certain propensity on upside or downside? Maybe they're ripe for a certain offer and a conversion. Maybe they're at risk of churn. So how do we make sure that we don't have to do a win-back campaign? Let's ensure we don't lose them in the first place. So when we think of a first-party data strategy, this to me is the four critical elements of it. The other thing to consider, though, is when you think of those four rows that we just looked at, there's more and more stakeholders that often have a seat at the CXM table. In 2020, here in Las Vegas, actually virtually, but at Summit, we declared that it was the decade of the CIO and CMO. And ultimately, what we meant by that is technology strategy and marketing strategy had to be more aligned than ever. In 2021, we saw that really pick up. Over 60% of CIOs and CMOs said they were meeting on a daily basis. But in just a few years beyond that, you're seeing a number of other C-level roles often getting implemented into organizations. And even if you don't have a chief privacy officer, there's probably an increased focus on privacy strategy. We've seen something like a chief data officer see a 29% year-over-year increase at Fortune 500 companies. Thinking beyond just marketing, what's the overall customer experience, often now with a CXO that's across that? And with folks trying to do more with less to ensure profitability, to attach ROI to solutions, even a CFO or financial strategy often comes into play as well when we think about what are the tools, the data sources, and the elements to really bring together a cohesive first-party data strategy. I just wanted to give a quick nod to car sales, right? This was a company that was looking at a few of these bubbles together. They've had a long time focus on ensuring customer trust. That's your privacy strategy. They wanted to have a technology in place that would future-proof their business. They wanted to have that actually benefit their marketing teams. And so they turned to real-time CDP for this. And I love this quote from their GM of media here, who said, "Now we have a fantastic first-party data set, and we'll come out of this being able to offer marketers a strong, privacy-first way of targeting their users in a post-cookie world." And if you'd like to learn more about car sales story, that's on adobe.com as well. But this is ultimately where we want to help all of you who might be trying to reach a similar goal of understanding what do I do with first-party data, how do I honor consumer trust, and how am I still going to fill the top of the marketing funnel. And that's what we'll talk about next, this emergence of full-funnel marketing needs in the CDP space. I promise you last three stats, and then I'll shut up about these. But of everything I just said around building a first-party data strategy, brands are feeling like they need to get prepared but aren't yet, the numbers from just 2 months ago that we ran are more telling than ever. 75% of brands are still relying heavily on third-party cookies, this is the stat I alluded to before, that 50% or more of their customer base and media spend is operating in places that are already deprecating third-party cookies, or already cookieless environments. This is where we're really trying to ensure that everyone doesn't sit back and wait and say, well, we'll see what happens with Google, we'll see if that timeline shifts again. To me, that's kind of a red herring, right? There's already so much of your customer base that is in cookieless environments, and there's bigger downside in this also, with 75% of these folks saying, yeah, third-party cookie demise is going to hurt my business. So here's where we get to the solution and where I'm extremely, extremely excited to talk to you all about today. If you've attended summits in the past, you might have seen this slide, which we have said, this is our unwavering vision of what we're doing with real-time CDP. This will be a single system for data management across the entire customer lifecycle, from awareness to conversion to growth to loyalty. And for those of you that might already be Adobe customers of Adobe Audience Manager, that has been our DMP solution and continues to be our DMP solution that previously has primarily filled the left side of this equation. Right? If I want to go buy third-party cookie audiences in a marketplace, I can do that. I can generate awareness and find prospecting lists there. Now what we've done is we have opened up full funnel marketing use cases even further than before directly in real-time CDP that are not third-party cookie dependent. So this is what you have access to in real-time CDP, and I'll talk about 3 flavors here that I think are really important as you think about full funnel marketing and this vision being a reality now. The first is first-party data extensibility. We know that first-party data is very coveted. You can't just grow or find more of it overnight. So how do you get the most reach out of the first-party data you do have? This is something we've had live previously. It's called Segment Match by Adobe Experience Platform. I'll talk about it more in a second, but this is where you can partner with other brands with consent at the forefront and actually collaborate on overlapped profiles. So that is great for enrichment of your profiles, as well as able to target users across publishers without the need for cookies. The second piece that we clearly have Epsilon here talking with today is the accessibility of working with third-party data partners directly in real-time CDP. And I'm just thrilled for this. You heard about this in yesterday's keynote briefly and yesterday's innovation session if you attended that. But this is an open framework for partners that have data like Epsilon to be able to bring that data in safely and securely and use that in real-time CDP. And I want to highlight that we have built this and architected this in a way that that data is flowing into a unique space with all of our data usage labeling and enforcement policies against it. So you can label data and you can set any internal policies of what should and shouldn't be done with that data. So we're really, really excited for this open framework that's going to allow you both to get new prospect lists as well as enrich users you might have with additional data points like Tim just talked about. And the third is we've already had a plethora of places to activate audiences to. But you might have heard yesterday, we're announcing a number of new destinations as well. With LiveRamp, giving access to their whole network of publishers and new channels as well, like connected TV and audio through them. We have TikTok now, Amazon Ads as direct integrations that we're launching with real-time CDP. And I should mention that we continue to have our destination SDK. Meaning if there's not something pre-built in our catalog that you do want to work with, there's the ability to build custom destinations as well. So these 3 flavors get me really excited because you're getting more extensibility out of your first-party data, you're bringing in new data into real-time CDP, and you're able to use that and activate that across more channels than ever. That to me is a huge unlock to how we actually solve the challenge that all of you and many others have been asking of what am I going to do when third-party cookies go away? What does my data strategy look like? How do I still achieve all of this? So let me talk just a little bit more about the flavors of this. When we think of data scale in a cookieless world, by the way, that's not me. I don't know where this stock photo came from, but I get asked that all the time. If you want to achieve full funnel marketing from acquisition to loyalty without the need for third-party cookies, we have you covered here. If you want to power personalization at every step to make sure that experiences are still customized so we can move beyond some of those stats we talked about earlier, we have that covered as well. The first flavor I mentioned was that data extensibility. So this piece, as I mentioned, has already been GA'd for about 2 years, and it's called Segment Match by Adobe Experience Platform. This is available to any real-time CDP customer. What this allows for is 3 different use cases. One is if you're at a company that has multiple lines of business, business units, different regions that might have some division between how customer data can be shared. This is a privacy-safe way to actually share that internally. Second is think of oftentimes credit cards and airlines, other partnerships that might be out there. That's a classic example, but what we're also seeing is brands from across different verticals wanting to forge partnerships to say, hey, we might have an overlap of audiences. How do we better collaborate on that data and both benefit from what you might know about a customer and what we might know about that same customer? So that gives you a better understanding of these enriched profiles. The third use case, like I mentioned, is around if a publisher, if you're wanting to activate an audience on a publisher without the need for third-party cookies, if they're using real-time CDP as well, you could say, here's an audience that I want to find. You could look at the overlap of what part of that audience is also found on the publisher, and then you would actually be able to target them there as well. So that's an exciting unlock for both retargeting use cases as well as for the publisher to be able to use a seed audience and expand from there. The second piece, though, again, that we're just so excited to be talking about today and here with Epsilon is not just second-party enriched profiles, but third-party enriched profiles as well, with the thousands of attributes and data that Epsilon can bring to the table. This can allow for enrichment of understanding more about your customers, more reach in where you can find customers, and what Tim's going to also talk about in a second, a critical component of this is the identity resolution, so that you can make sure you're getting the most out of your first-party data, reconciling that, and ensuring that it's clean and in good shape when you go to activate. I don't know if this is the cheesiest thing I've ever put up here. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. I don't know. You tell me. But we've heard about a 360 view of a customer for years, and I think maybe we kind of roll our eyes at that now. The way I'm thinking about this, though, is a 360 view is just the data points you know about your customer. And we've moved to a place now where you have to know so much more. If you think of the sphere of a customer world, there's a lot more happening outside of what they're doing directly with your brand. And that is the level of understanding they're expecting to have when they think of those rising consumer expectations around personalization. So for me, I'm excited about the fact that we can give you, yes, a 360 view of your customer by assembling all of your first-party data. But we can start to turn that and say, well, what else do your partner brands know? That's your second-party data that start to build out that understanding more. And third, how can we work with a partner like Epsilon to bring even more data to the table and understand more touch points around that person? So to me, that's moving from a 360 view to a 3D view of your customer. I didn't hear any audible groans, so I don't know, maybe that message plays a little bit here. But here's what we're trying to do with real-time CDP to really fulfill on that and what we're already doing for hundreds of brands around the globe today. On the data collection side, yes, you have your first-party known or unknown data. When I say unknown data, I mean pseudonymous, things like behavioral signals that might not have PII attached to them. But now with the ability to work with partner data and those two flavors I just talked about, being able to actually manage that profile, assemble audiences, activate that anywhere along with the new destinations I just mentioned, have all of this underpinned by a patented layer of data governance that we offer end-to-end on this. And again, that is more than just labeling objects. That is actually setting policies and enforcing those across an organization, which we've seen also really help with IT and marketing relationships so you can ensure end-to-end across all teams that might be collecting and using data that that's used the right way. The last piece I want to mention real quick is the underpinning of Adobe Experience Platform. That we're talking about real-time CDP today, but the foundation that it is built on spans also to other applications like customer journey analytics, Adobe Journey Optimizer, and I think that's an important consideration when you think of what a CDP should do, having it natively connected where that profile is extensible from insights to engagement to journeys, and having a full circle between those. So I think just to lay this out maybe really cleanly here, this is what Tim's going to talk about in just a second. As you build a first-party data strategy like we've just discussed with Adobe on Adobe Real-Time CDP, you're bringing together the data you know. However, Epsilon might also have a lot more, again, thousands of potential attributes around that customer. Being able to bring all of that together in one unified view gives you that better understanding of your customer. It gives you centralized identity resolution, and it actually allows, again, you to go from the top of funnel to bottom of funnel in between. So Tim, I'll just tee you up with this slide, but I think the next section we're going to talk about is that first-party data strategy coupled with what a data partner can bring, how Adobe Real-Time CDP encompasses all of that.
Thanks, Ryan. So, I wrapped up the last piece by talking about how important it is to get your first-party data right, how important it is to resolve identity so you're able to effectively unify those seemingly unrelated records. And that happens more often than you would think. And as I said, we like to baseline things when we start these client initiatives. So we'll provide metrics to clients up front. We'll run tests, match tests, identity tests for clients, so they can get some visibility of how many duplicate records they have, for example. And as I mentioned before, we unify those records with our identity solution. It's powered by our proprietary identifier called Core ID. And the Core ID is built using both name-based and ID-based metrics here. So obviously, everything we do these days has to have this fundamental foundation of privacy, right? GDPR, CCPA, more regulations are getting added. It's being addressed on the state level as well. So first and foremost, we all need to, not just Epsilon, but we all need to make sure that we're meeting those privacy compliance regulations. So with that in place, we then want to turn our head to scale, because to be effective and to be able to join these records, we need as much visibility of as many consumers as possible. Now, these numbers you see up here are for the US, and Epsilon is able to recognize over 250 million individuals, not devices, 250 million individuals or consumers, and that equates to what you see up here is 125 million households in the US. And when we're pulling together this data, what we're trying to do is capture as many addressable identifiers as possible. We're capturing postal address, we're capturing email addresses, we're capturing phone numbers, we're capturing IP addresses, obviously where this is available and where we can do it and meet the privacy regulations. But for all of those individual consumer records, 95% of them have over one of those different sources. 87% actually have more than 4 different sources. And we've been doing this, as I said, for decades. So the next most important thing you need to think about then is the durability of that and the connectivity of that. If I've now identified this individual, can I continue to do that consistently? Month 1, month 3, month 6, if they don't engage on the site, if they do engage on the site, how am I continuing to connect those records? So that's some of the numbers behind Epsilon's proprietary Core ID. Moving forward, I did want to paint a picture and start to make this a little bit more tangible in the context of the real-time CDP created by Adobe. So what you see here is a screenshot taken from the real-time CDP. On the left-hand side, you see data sources that are feeding into the real-time CDP. In this instance, the upper one, as represented by this Amazon bucket, is actually where the Epsilon Core ID data is coming from. What I want you to imagine underneath here is all the different data sources that you will have within your organizations. So the information coming from the POS system, the information coming from maybe your web analytics tool, the information coming from your app analytics tool, the data coming from your finance systems, all of that is feeding into AEP, real-time CDP. Now, what that means, and what I've been talking about pretty consistently here, is how you now may have multiple records for the same individual. Here we've transitioned from talking about Mr. Fleisch here as a Tom or a Ryan to this gentleman here called Max Majesty. Now, you see multiple records for Max here, and each one of those would be captured in real-time CDP. It's customer record number 1, sorry, customer record number 2. Seemingly 2 different individuals. He's gone by Mr. Brandon in one and Max Majesty in the other. Now, as I said, you want a baseline. You want to unify this and resolve identity for this first-party data first. You need to make sure that the records are tied together before you even start adding on that third-party data. And that's where Epsilon's identity resolution comes in. It's able to unify that information, and what you see now here is a fully resolved record. And this all rolls up through the real-time CDP interface. You see the core ID in the center here, bridging all those individual, seemingly different CRM records for Max there. Now, once you've done that, you're immediately going to see benefits. You're immediately going to see benefits in match, reach, personalization, whether it's on-site, whether it's off-site, because you've now got a far richer profile just with your first-party data. Now, you could have added third-party data on prior to that, but if you want to be efficient, if you really want to drive the maximum outcome, you really need to get that first-party data right first. Now, from there, you'll go on and add additional data. Now, Epsilon has its own proprietary data sets. You see a few of them up here: lifestyle, demographic, finance information. There is a huge shopping list of data available from Epsilon here. Now, of course, you're going to have other data feeds internally that you might see represented here, and maybe other third-party data providers as well. Now you've got your fully resolved identity. You're going to add on this additional information, and you're going to see it alongside that same record. So hopefully you're seeing here how we're painting a picture of what was seemingly multiple records. We now have a resolved record for that single individual, Max Majesty. We've resolved all those first-party attributes. Now we've added on that third-party data, and we can really go to town with those additional attributes. Now you can use that information to personalize on your owned and operated sites and channels. That could be obviously on your website, within your apps. You could certainly be using it to do paid mail personalization as well. People are still doing mailers, and very effectively as well. You can also use this data as it comes to actually activating paid media campaigns too. Okay, back to you, Ryan.
To be clear, Max Majesty is not one of my pseudonyms, but it is a pretty cool name, so I might adopt that. This is super exciting stuff, right? That if we think back to our spectrum here, you have first-party data, you have your interactions, your behavior, your preferences on a customer. Being able to do better ID resolution around that, as well as add additional attributes to those profiles, all of this is encompassed within Adobe Real-Time CDP and can be working with partners like Epsilon. The thing to walk away from this section of the presentation is full funnel data management and marketing, check. Being able to have scale in a cookieless world, from being able to do brand partnerships, data partnerships, is here. Having privacy, governance, and trust at the base of this, and having a natively connected foundation that allows you to use this beyond just management, but activations to insights and beyond. The last piece I want to talk about, though, this morning is, okay, how do you actually take all of this first-party data strategy now with second and third-party data and actually derive use cases and value realization from it? We went through a pretty intensive exercise this past year. We looked at over 40 live customer implementations, really, and worked with them to get a better understanding of what use cases were they currently using real-time CDP for, and what kind of value were they getting out of those. We actually built a library of over 40 use cases that will be published as a rolling thunder throughout the course of the year, and I'll talk more about how those are manifesting in just a second. But one key takeaway was that people aren't reinventing the wheel with a CDP. Oftentimes, it's use cases we might be familiar with, but in a much more evolved approach to how to do those. These are 5 that we have identified as flagship use cases we see our customers doing. And again, I'll talk about how you can realize these as well with new assets and in-product features we're launching in just a second. But the first, intelligent re-engagement, this was an evolved approach we often saw from a cart abandonment or conversion abandonment campaign. I'll give you a few slides example on that in just a second, so I'll come back there. But don't lose campaigns I made reference to this before. Oftentimes we see win-back campaigns historically having been done by, let me set a latency if I haven't seen an interaction or a conversion in 6 months. Great, I want to go try to win this person back. We want to help you don't lose that person in the first place. How do you spot churn signals with our customer AI propensity models as they come in real time, and actually be able to understand these are at-risk segments that you might want to launch campaigns against differently? The third was around, I think there's been an over-index on conversion rate oftentimes. We look at conversion rate, we get really excited that, oh my God, my conversion rate just went from 0.9% to 1%. I did awesome. And we neglect the fact that, hey, there's still 99% of people that didn't convert. So what was their experience like? Did we just bombard them with so many ads and messages that while, yes, we squeezed a few more conversions, there could have been long-term risk that we did by, frankly, pissing off a lot of people with too many messages? I think we can all relate to that. So how do you look at more a one-to-one approach of what does this exact customer need to convert, and how are you measuring the different cycles that they are in that stages? The fourth is around contextual recognition. On average, 98% of web visitors to a website are in an unauthenticated state. So how are you still able to recognize if they have previously been there in an authenticated state, and you can still recognize in a privacy-safe way what data you might know about that person and use that for personalization? And the last one was an evolved approach to cross-sell or upsell campaigns. Historically, we've seen cross-sell and upsell campaigns as kind of a stringing together one-to-one events. Someone bought this. Now you should buy this. Now you should upgrade to this. But actually looking at more signals to understand, are they getting value out of their first purchase? Are there service needs that need to be met? How are they using this? What are their behaviors in coming back? How can we recommend better and better experiences to evolve one-time value to lifetime value? I'm giving you just a high-level, flyby of these 5, but here's what you should be excited about. You might have heard this yesterday if you joined the innovation session, but we're launching use case playbooks that are in product that are guided workflows on how to set up not just these flagship use cases, but many, many more. The way this experience looks is you simply go in, you select what is my objective. Let's say, for instance, you say I'm trying to re-engage with customers. You would then get a pared down menu of use cases, including intelligent re-engagement that we just talked through. And you have a guided workflow to say, here's the common data elements, the segments you would need to set up, the journeys, the campaigns that would go along with that, all in a marketer-friendly workflow. Back to the title of this session, I am so excited about this because this is the linchpin that I think a lot of brands face. We've bought a CDP, we have a wealth of data at our hands. Now we have to go, every time we want to create an audience segment, understand IT strategy, work with data strategy on what's coming in where, have a blank canvas of what segments I should create. This takes the guesswork out of that and says, here is the guided way, step by step, that you should set up a campaign that will truly derive value for you. I believe we have a demo of this running also over at the booth, so swing by there if you want to learn more, or I'll stick around after and can talk to you about this. But this is going live, I believe, in the next month. So this will be at your fingertips in real-time CDP and Adobe Journey Optimizer and Customer Journey Analytics. So not only can you execute CDP use cases, this is attached to the other areas of Experience Platform to actually say, yes, beyond just creating segments, I want to attach journeys to them, and I want to collect insights. So really excited about use case playbooks. For the last few minutes here, I just want to give you an example and as well as a menu of other options you will have to talk through some of these use cases we discussed. I'm going to give you a retail-focused example, but this obviously applies to any vertical with abandoned conversion. So when I talk about reimagined and evolved use cases, I just want to spend a minute crystallizing what that actually means. Sorry for the small text on here in this format. But the objective you still want to accomplish here is I need to intelligently and responsibly re-engage someone who has abandoned some type of a conversion path before they completed it. But the goal here is to actually create experiences for that person, not annoying reminders. And that annoying reminders is, I think, the out with the old that we were saying, right? We've all related to this. You leave something in a cart, 5 seconds later, you're getting bombarded with "did you forget something" messages. I'm like, no, it was 5 seconds ago. I didn't forget, right? Maybe I left that for a reason. So we want to move to a more one-to-one approach rather than just using this as a one-size-fits-all for anyone who abandoned and triggering off of a single event. These are just some of the other considerations that we see our customers doing that lead to much more effective campaigns. Okay, well, do we know this customer has only in the past converted when an offer has been present? Maybe we want to create something personalized for them, maybe not. Should we actually be looking at, is there in-stock or out-of-stock notifications on a product, and should that affect our timing? This one is really important. What if someone abandoned something in a cart, but there was real-time behavioral signals right after that showed they actually started expressing interest in a different category or a different product? Ensuring that that requalification happens to update messaging and marketing to actually resonate with what they're looking at now, not what they already decided not to convert on. And the last one is key, especially as we stand here with Epsilon, is what do we know more about this customer than just this one singular event that happened? If we can actually market to them as a person, understand what their needs are, not just that they left something in a cart, but what were their intentions around using it, what are they trying to solve for, both with your first-party data as well as the wealth of data that Epsilon and partners can bring to the table, that creates a really compelling experience. The last thing I'll say on this is these use cases that we've really analyzed, we've broken down into individual application flavors. So if I want to look to do this from a real-time CDP perspective with a focus on marketing to the customer and not just that abandoned event, we've got you covered. But if you want to broaden those wings and say, well, now I actually need the delivery to be able to orchestrate and engage on those optimal next steps with a journey canvas at my fingertips, Adobe Journey Optimizer is natively connected to our experience platform here. And then if I want to really understand more about those journeys in real time of what's working and what's not and activate those insights as they come in, Customer Journey Analytics can add an even greater flavor to that. Each of these applications have achieved great leadership positions in their respective categories, but the natively connected benefits here of being powered by Experience Platform is where I get really excited. Because if I can see an insight happen in CJA and click publish and have that ready as an audience in CDP, and then be able to use that same profile as part of a journey, this becomes really, really compelling. So here's what we're doing for you. What I just showed you is a few very high-level slides around Vision Collateral, but if you need help telling these stories, understanding where we can take you, we have that covered for you. As well as if you want to see this in action, demos that we can show you, but more importantly, how do you actually figure out where to start with these use cases and where you should grow to? That's where we have maturity frameworks that we can walk you through and understand where the right starting point is and how to get the most value for the quickest work. Getting to the more technical side, actually having reference architecture and blueprints so you can understand how these use cases are typically set up and achieved, as well as technical how-to guides attached to those so that technical users can have a step-by-step walkthrough. All of this coupled with the marketer-friendly workflows of in-product accelerators, and all the way down through Adobe and through our partners having service packages mapped to these use cases. So if you want to start with just a few or even one use case in mind, you can get value out of that and grow from there. I hope this piece has been really exciting to everyone as we think back to the title of how do I get the most value out of real-time CDP. This is what we want to unlock and what we have unlocked for you. Use cases at your fingertips, attached to value, ability to have data of all types. We'll just close quickly with two things. One is I would encourage everyone as you learn, go to adobe.com on the customer success page and check out just the wealth of studies that we have across different AEP applications, as well as on the adobe.com blog, where we have new blog posts from Qualcomm, Petco, many, many others, Coca-Cola, MLB. There's a ton of great content that you can learn from other customers that have adopted real-time CDP and are seeing fantastic value there. And Tim, maybe if you want to give a nod to one other session happening today, if folks want to learn more about this with another customer.
Yeah, if you want to snap a picture of this slide.
Yep.
So I've been talking a lot about the identity solution we can provide. We've been implementing Adobe solutions for many years now. We have one of the largest benches that are able to deliver Adobe solutions. One of those clients speaking today with us is GMF. They've got some fabulous use cases around, my favorite one is probably retargeting approved but not funded individuals. These are individuals who've applied for leasing or financing for a car but have yet to purchase. So it kind of echoes some of what Ryan was just talking about re-engagement of those consumers. So I do encourage you, snap a picture of this. The session's at 1 p.m. today in the Lido 3003 room. But GMF and our client lead will be speaking to that there.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. So again, big thank you for everyone joining so early in Las Vegas. Really appreciate it. I'll just leave you with this. Building a first-party data strategy, that's obviously critical to CDP success, but then thinking through, with the aid of what we just talked about, of how to plan out use cases. We'd love to work with you on those maturity frameworks and our library of use cases we have now. Explore data partners and brand partnerships to actually be able to get more second and third-party data augmenting your first-party strategy. Like I said, learn from the hundreds of customers globally that are using real-time CDP and the success stories that we have online, and we'd love to talk to you more about those. And like we said, this is not the cookieless future. This is a cookieless now, with a lot of this already taking places in cookieless environments. So once again, everyone, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.